Hey, welcome back to the Spector Creative channel. I'm Lego Scott Toy Guru Neitlich here, as always. And today, as we always talk about toys and collecting, from my experience working in the industry and as a collector, I want to talk about the differences between how different companies approach things. Now, all toy companies, no matter whether you're large or small, you are under constant pressure from retail in order to innovate. It's very different from other things like, foodstuffs and clothing. Well, I mean, clothing does have new things, but most toys, most consumer products don't have to have a completely brand new concept every year. Sure, mac and cheese, has some innovations like being microwavable, but it's not, like a completely different food. Versus with toys, retail tends to expect a complete 180, something very new every single season, which means toy companies are under a lot of pressure to do this. And the two large companies have different approaches. And I want to talk about that because it's very interesting to look at to kind of understand why we're getting what we're getting. Whether it's templated or sort of one-offs. Those are the two approaches. So let's dive into that and let's look at the two largest toy companies, Hasbro and Mattel, if you don't count Lego, which is bigger than both of them, but Lego is not an action figure producer outside of Bionicle. So let's move on. All right, so Hasbro and Mattel. Hasbro, especially some really good examples are if you look back at the beginning of the MCU. I mean, they're still doing this, but visually, I think if we look at some toys from when the MCU kicked off, it's easier to see. Everything that Hasbro tends to do is templated, meaning they have a price point, they have a package size, and they will apply this to all of their licenses, whether they're in the same universe or not. So here's a good example. You can see both Captain America, Thor, basic figures there. Same price point, same basic concept, a figure with an accessory, right? And then you have the deluxe figures that tend to have more of a action feature for the kids. So here you have Thor with a projectile launcher, making it deluxe. So, but you're still looking at that template of basic figure and deluxe figure. And then you have your 10-inch figure with feature. And again, this is very templated. You see this over many brands for Hasbro, where they'll take the same exact concept and then use it as a mold or a template to apply for all brands shipping that year. So, again, basic figures, deluxe figures with more kid-friendly projectiles, and then your 10-inch figure with feature. That's what they were doing about 10, 15 years ago. Fast forward to today, and it's no different. You can see Hasbro has their new 4-inch line of epic superheroes, or epic heroes. And they've applied this to their, bread and butter hero line, Marvel, the Avengers, and all of that. But again, much like templated from the beginning of the MCU, current toys are the same way with Hasbro. They will take you've got your deluxe figures with extra accessories, usually a little more kid-friendly, and your basic figures, all within the same world. Now you might say, well, wait a minute, every toy company does basic and deluxe. What Hasbro does that's unique is they take a scale, a price point, a form factor, and a piece count, and they apply that same formula across many licenses in order to present retail a cohesive program that can ideally hang together, which is why you see the same exact scale going to Marvel's Avengers, going to Star Wars, going to Spider-Man, and yeah, you could say like, okay, Spider-Man and Avengers are the same property, but the way retail looks at it, no. Same thing with X-Men. It's a different property. It's still Marvel, but they look at X-Men and Spider-Man and Avengers as different properties. So you can see Hasbro has applied their 4-inch epic scale, their basic and deluxe figures across all of their major licenses. They do this for many reasons, the biggest being cost and retail presentation. If they've already got retail hooked on a scale, on a price point, on the amount of accessories, the value that a product is going to give, if they can replicate that across brands, it's pretty easy to say, hey, you're doing success with this scale, let's just do it in another brand. Which is why you see this from Hasbro all the time, that once they're locked into a scale, it's everywhere. All right, so on the other side of the aisle, and the other side of the country, from Pawtucket to El Segundo, Mattel takes a little bit of an opposite approach. They obviously still have basic and deluxe figures, but if you look, they are usually unique to the brand. So for Green Lantern, a brand that I worked on, the deluxe figures had the instant transforming shapeshifters, and the basic figures had snap-on kid-friendly accessories. Now, at first glance, you could say this is no different than Hasbro, basic and deluxe, but what's unique that Mattel does is they take the feature for a brand, so in this case Green Lantern's shape-shifting plastic origami, and they apply it throughout the line. Basic figures, deluxe figures, and even in this case the TV driver used the same technology. Instead of getting a sort of a handheld fold-out accessory, the TV driver was a large item that could replicate the exact same feature. In this case, a plane that could collapse into a tank. So it's a feature-based product line as opposed to a templated-based feature line. You don't see this fold-up, plastic origami is what we called it, in other toy lines. It was exclusive to Green Lantern that year. You didn't see this showing up in Batman and in WWE. Speaking of which, if you look at some of Mattel's other lines, again, you'll see that they are unique to the license. The WWE figures are very different than, if you will, something like the Jurassic Park figures, right? It's two lines that are put out by Mattel. Mattel makes Jurassic Park figures based around the dinosaurs and the scale that's needed in order to have humans and dinosaurs. WWE figures that don't have, beasts, if you will, they can be scaled a little higher, in case that's why they're 6-inch. So different approaches to two major lines in order to accommodate the specific needs, style, play pattern, and accessory requirements in order to put out a toy line of that brand. In the case of Jurassic Park, you're getting smaller figures with accessories. With WWE, you're getting larger figures. So it's not a universal approach like the way Hasbro does. Neither one is right or wrong. They're just two different approaches. So there are exceptions, obviously, and you could say, well, wait a minute, I've seen this on both sides of the aisle where one form factor is applied to all of the toys. It's not just exclusive to Hasbro. But Hasbro tends to do it universally, constantly, if you will, where all of their brands share one form factor and the same price points for different SKUs. Mattel has dabbled in this. You could look at Masters of the Universe Origins and say, oh, okay, well, the Origin bodies are also used for those WWE Motu mashup figures. And yes, 100% true, but this is the exception to the rule. This is a one-off promo item, not an evergreen year-on-year line. It's meant to be a mashup between WWE and Motu, like the Ninja Turtle mashup they're doing right now. So while both companies will focus on evergreen items, they have very different approaches to how they tackle action figure lines, and just being aware of it helps mitigate expectations of what we're going to get. I hope this video is a helpful look at the way two of the largest companies approach licensed action figure lines, and if you enjoyed this, please do share it with others, and I always thank you for your support. I'll see you guys next time.